What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Hope you're all doing well, and as usual, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to click here on another video, where today we're going to be talking about a film that I had heard quite a bit about going into it due to its buzz in the festival world. And so without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on a film that I think is going to work for some and not work for others, and that film is called The Testament of Ann Lee. Directed by Mona Fastvold, who wrote this film alongside Brady Corbet. This film stars people like Amanda Seyfried, Pullman, Christopher Abbott, Tim Blake Nelson, and more. And one thing immediately that I think is really interesting about this film is that last year there was a film directed by Brady Corbet called The Brutalist that got a lot of love in the award season. It's a film I reviewed here on the channel and enjoyed quite a bit, even though I didn't love necessarily how the film ended, but I enjoyed that film quite a bit. And that film was written alongside Brady Corbet by Mona Fastvold, who directs this film. And this time around, they've swapped places where she's the director and he is also writing alongside her. So I thought that was a really interesting element to this film immediately. And yeah, I went into this film having seen some of my peers give this really good scores on Letterboxd. I saw that the love around it and the festival world has been really good. It won the Golden Lion at the Venice Film Festival. So put all those things together, and I was really intrigued to check out a film that honestly I didn't know much about, other than going into it, and my wife had read online that it's about some sort of religious leader of some sort. And so outside of that, I knew nothing else. Somebody vaguely mentioned to me on the way in that there was some musical elements to this film as well. So all things I wasn't really expecting going into it. But as usual, let's get into what this film is all about first, and then we'll get into my thoughts on the film. Spanning 18th century England and pre-revolutionary America, The Testament of Ann Lee follows the visionary religious leader Ann Lee, founder of the Shaker movement. Haunted by personal tragedy, yet driven by an unshakable belief in equality and communal living, she gathers a devoted following who view her as the female embodiment of Christ. Persecution intensifies, and Anne fights to protect both her followers and the incipient utopia they have begun to build. And this is a real tough one to talk about for me, I won't lie. This is a really interesting film in so many ways, but I gotta be honest right out of the gate and say I didn't really love The Testament of Ann Lee. And I think that I may, based on the reviews I've seen online, be a contrarian in the mix here. I might be in the minority on this one. And with that said, I do want to also follow that up by saying that I didn't hate The Testament of Ann Lee. I do think there's a lot about this film to love, especially if you are a cinephile and you just like art in general. Somebody said it while we were talking outside of the film, me and the other fellow critics that were there, but this film is art, not entertainment. And I think that's something that is a really good way to describe this film for sure, because this is the kind of film that in almost every way, especially in the technical department, is beautiful to look at and incredible to listen to. This is a very technically sound film from top to bottom. The cinematography is great. It was shot on 35mm film. They use real lighting throughout the course of the film, natural lighting from the sun, the moon, the stars, all kinds of stuff like that. Fire in the film. There is no studio lighting, and you can tell. Everything about this film feels realistic and vivid in the way that the film is shot, the way that it looks, the costume design, the set design, and of course, it's a period piece that's taking you to the 18th century. So you're gonna need the buildings and everything, even in the dialogue and the cadence of their voice, the older English. You need all of those things for this film to feel like it takes place in that time. And The Testament of Ann Lee has all of those elements in droves. This is an incredibly well-made film from top to bottom when it comes down to production, and the cast is excellent here, with Amanda Seyfried giving an incredible performance, incredibly captivating in a lot of ways. She completely engulfs herself in the role of Ann Lee, this woman that, like I already mentioned in the synopsis, has kind of taken on this religious cult leader like status in a way, being essentially this embodiment of Christ. She is the mother of this religion. She is one in the same with Christ, and she leads this group called the Shakers. And if you look into it a little bit, there's connection to the Quakers and different things like that in this whole storyline and the real life story of this woman. But full transparency, I didn't really know about her story going into this, so I was just taking the film at face value, recognizing that there's, of course, like any film based on a true person going to be, things that are embellishing the story, kind of some creative liberties as far as what really happened. But just as far as the filmmaking, it's incredibly well made. One thing that's really interesting is that the film does have musical elements to the film, but it isn't really like the kind of film that kind of stops and gives you a musical that plays out a story beat or a character beat. It's not one of those movies where it's like the character is going through an arc through the song, or it's getting you from point A to point B. Instead, apparently a lot of the songs are actually things that they sung in those times and around this Shaker religious group. So you have things like chants and a lot of stuff that oftentimes was either rhyming or just kind of saying the same words over and over again. And it was all accompanied by different kinds of movements, body movements, hand movements, and different things like that, which oftentimes I felt really worked well. There was some great choreography in the film in terms of how the Shakers were dancing or moving on screen, that working with the cinematography made for just visually appealing sequences. And while I did think some of those sequences meandered quite a bit, I appreciated how they were handled from a filmmaking perspective. With all of that said, I'm always going to be a story guy over any of that other stuff. I can appreciate a film that has all of those top tier elements, and a lot of times when those top tier elements work together with story, you get an incredible film. Of course, some of the best movies that have incredible stories also have incredible filmmaking. And in the case of this film, while I do think there's going to be plenty who love it, and there are already showing to be many who love it, if you look online and Letterboxd and other sites where people are reviewing the film, it seems like a lot of people love it. I gotta be honest in saying that I think this is the kind of film that works for a festival crowd or for just a film buff crowd. And I am a film buff, and so I loved a lot about this film, but I gotta be honest in saying that I was pretty bored. I thought the story of this film meandered in so many ways, and I think its wild over-reliance on narration over the course of the film oftentimes undercut the film's ability to just let you experience the story, and instead is just telling you the story. It never really feels like you're getting latched onto the film or the characters in any sort of emotional way. It feels like you're just going through the flow of the film that just feels like you're going from one place to the next. We're jumping weeks or months sometimes down the line, with the narration filling in the gaps at times, giving you stuff that I think is a lot more interesting than what we're actually seeing in the film. And you're just kind of seeing events of this woman's life and the people around her playing out, less so than actually watching this like a story that you're seeing unfold in front of you. And so it left me really torn, because during the movie, I was ultimately bored at a lot of sequences in the film, but I was also still captivated by how good the film looked, by how well acted it was. And when the film is captivating, when the story does get interesting, when there are sequences that are more engaging to watch, they are few and far between, and oftentimes pretty short-lived. And when you have something that sounds engaging and sounds very interesting in the story, a lot of times you are just kind of taking in that information via narration as we jump another week or a few months at a time into a new place and seeing our characters in a completely different place. And so it left me in a really conflicted place, because as somebody who likes story, I didn't really feel like I got that here. As somebody who likes character that I can feel like I can emotionally connect to, I didn't really feel like I got that here. But what you do have is a film that's incredibly powerful in terms of filmmaking and has a lead performance and supporting cast performances that are undeniably great. So how do you review a film like this? And films like this, I've realized, just aren't for me. This is not a bad film. This is not a terrible film. I think there are certainly worse ways you can spend your time. I think if you're a big cinephile and you kind of want to just see a big artsy film that isn't really going for entertainment value, but instead is going for just something a little bit more ambitious, then I think there's going to be enjoyment to be had with The Testament of Ann Lee. But at times, I think because of the way that the story is told, you're meant to see Ann Lee as this empowering female figure in this very trying time, where she was a lot of times pointed to and persecuted for being a witch, or, being this, evil woman who's trying to control religion. Is she even a woman? And I thought those were all interesting elements, but I don't think that the film explores them enough outside of a couple of key moments where she gets persecuted, but those sequences end so quickly and we move on to the next sequence where she's kind of past that persecution and the narration is filling in the gaps. And so it ultimately left me in this place of feeling like I'm so into how well made this film is but I just don't give a shit about the story. I just don't give a shit about the characters. And because of that, because the film doesn't allow you to latch on to Ann Lee in this real emotional way, instead, for me at times, she feels like this pretentious religious nut, despite the fact that I feel like the film isn't really that, and that she as a character isn't really that. And so there is this element about the film that just feels redundant. There is this element about the film that does feel like it meanders. There's this element about the film that feels like we're spending time on the wrong things and filling in the more interesting gaps with narration in a way that holds back the film from being a story that you truly can go on a journey with the characters. And so by the time the movie was over, I can genuinely say that The Testament of Ann Lee is an incredibly well-made film that a lot of cinephiles will love, but I think a lot of people are going to watch this film and be bored. They're going to be halfway through it and just think, what am I even watching? Why am I watching this? And I honestly was feeling this at times, despite that part of my brain that was like, this is so well crafted. This is so well executed in so many ways. It's one of those things, and this is how I'll wrap this up, that oftentimes for me felt like the movie was saying, this is profound. Don't you think this is profound? Look at how profound this is. But instead, my mind was just consistently saying, yeah, in concept. It felt far more like something that just my brain was understanding is profound, but the movie itself never made it feel profound to me. So yeah, guys, you can see I'm really torn on this one, and I think that that's kind of a good thing in this very subjective space of film, because you have a film like this that's getting a lot of love from the festival world, where you have a bunch of big film buffs and critics that are at these festival screenings. And listen, if you're one of my peers who love this film, I'm not saying that you shouldn't like the film, but I do appreciate that I didn't love the film. You know, I do appreciate that I kind of walked away a little bit more in the middle, because I do think it's the kind of film that is going to have those kinds of reactions from many, despite the fact that so much about it is so well done. So with all that said, I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say about this movie. Have you checked it out? Are you planning on checking it out? To be honest, I am watching this and dropping this review over a month before it gets a limited theatrical release. I don't believe it's coming here to the States for a limited theatrical release until Christmas Day. So I am checking it out quite a bit early. So if you haven't seen it, totally understand. But if you're watching this review somewhere down the line, months or years down the line, and you've just seen the film and you just wanted to see if somebody else thinks the same thing as you, or you saw that I didn't love it too much and you kind of want to sit here and crap on it, down below in the comments, whatever the case may be, leave any and all comments down below. Hit the like button if you guys enjoyed the video, and subscribe for more early reviews like this, or just reviews in general, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.